It was 2:47 a.m. when a boy ran barefoot into the small police station of a quiet town. His clothes were torn, covered in dust and dried blood. His face was pale, his eyes wide, full of fear that felt older than him. Sergeant Malik, sitting half asleep behind the desk, looked up surprised. The boy didn't speak at first. He just stood there, breathing fast, as if he'd been running for miles. Malik stood. "What happened to you, kid? Are you hurt?" The boy slowly stepped forward. "They're coming," he whispered. "Who's coming?" "They'll kill me if you don't hide me." Malik's eyes narrowed. "Start from the beginning." The boy nodded. "My name is Zayan. I'm 16. I escaped from a place I was never supposed to leave." Malik brought him a glass of water. Zayan held it with shaking hands. "You escaped from where?" Malik asked. Zayan looked around the room, as if checking for cameras or spies. Then, very softly, he said, "It was a training camp, hidden in the mountains. They took me when I was 12. Malik raised an eyebrow. "You mean a kidnapping?" Zayan nodded. "At first, yes. But then, they trained us. They said we were the chosen ones, that we were going to become something great. Ghosts, warriors." Malik leaned back in his chair. "Okay, slow down. You're telling me you were trained by some secret group? For what?" Zayan looked up. His eyes were full of a sadness that didn't match his age. "To fight, to kill. They trained us like soldiers, taught us how to disappear, how to take orders, how to be silent." Malik didn't believe it. He had seen runaways before, troubled teens with wild stories. But there was something about this boy that didn't feel like a lie. "Why now?" Malik asked. "Why escape after 4 years?" Zayan looked down. "Because they gave me a mission, and I couldn't do it." Malik's voice became sharper. "What kind of mission?" Zayan's lips trembled. "They told me to kill a man. Said it was my test. I said no. I ran." There was silence in the room. Malik stared at the boy. Part of him still didn't believe it, but his training told him, this boy isn't faking the fear in his eyes. "What was the name of this group?" he asked. Zayan shook his head. "They never told us, but everyone feared one name." He looked up, almost afraid to say it. "Ghost." Malik froze. That word, ghost, it was from a classified case, a name he heard once, years ago, during a military joint task force briefing. A man from the Delta Force unit, famous, feared, and believed to be dead. Malik picked up the phone. He called an old friend, Captain Harris, a retired special ops officer. "Listen," Malik said. "A kid came in. Says he escaped from some kind of illegal training camp. He said the name, Ghost." There was silence on the other end. Then Harris replied, voice low and serious. "If that name is still being used, you're all in danger." Malik slowly placed the phone down. He looked at Zayan again. "Who else knows you're here?" "No one," Zayan said. "But they'll come for me. They always find the ones who run." Malik stood, locked the doors, closed the blinds. "You're safe here, for now." But inside, Malik knew something bigger was happening. That night, security cameras outside the police station suddenly turned off. A car parked across the road. Its windows were black. No one got out. Inside the police station, Malik loaded his weapon. Zayan sat quietly in the corner, hugging his knees. Malik asked, "Did you ever see this ghost?" Zayan nodded. "He trained me." "And what does he look like?" Zayan's voice dropped to a whisper. "I don't know. He always wore a mask. But once, I saw his eyes." He looked straight at Malik. They weren't the eyes of a man. They were the eyes of a killer. The night felt heavier now. The shadows outside the police station seemed darker, stretching long and silent across the empty street. Zayan sat still, eyes wide, listening to every sound, every creak, every whisper of wind. Sergeant Malik stood by the window, his hand on his gun. The phone call with Captain Harris had shaken him. He didn't know what to believe, but one thing was clear. Something was wrong. "What does Ghost want with you, Zayan?" Malik asked quietly. Zayan shook his head, his voice barely above a whisper. He wanted me to be like them, like the others. Malik frowned. The others? The other kids. Zayn nodded slowly. They trained us to be killers, to do things no one should ever do. They said we were meant to be the future, the perfect soldiers. Malik's gut twisted. He couldn't imagine what the boy had gone through. But the name Ghost, that was something different. That was a name that haunted soldiers, a name spoken in whispers. Suddenly, a noise broke the silence. A car, a black SUV, parked just across the street. Zayn's breath caught in his throat. He knew what it meant. He knew they had found him. "They're here," Zayn said, his voice trembling. Malik quickly moved to the door, locking it. "Stay down. Don't move." The car sat quietly outside. No one got out. It was like the calm before the storm. Malik grabbed his radio and spoke into it. "Back up. Now, we need eyes on the street." As he waited, his mind raced. He had heard rumors about Delta Force, elite soldiers who could disappear without a trace. But this was something else. Something worse. Ghost wasn't just a soldier. He was a myth, a legend. And Zayn's story was starting to feel like a nightmare. The minutes dragged by. Finally, Malik heard the crunch of footsteps on gravel. He peered through the blinds, and his heart skipped. 2 men, dressed in black, stepped out of the SUV. They were tall, silent, and moved like predators. The leader, who Malik couldn't see clearly, spoke into a headset. Zayn froze, staring at the men through the window. "They're coming," he whispered. "They'll never stop until they have me." Malik's fingers tightened around his gun. He wasn't afraid of these men, but he didn't know what they were capable of, and he had no idea who they were working for. He turned to Zayn. "Listen, kid, I need you to trust me. I'm getting you out of here." Zayn's eyes filled with fear. "No, they'll find me. They always find me. They'll kill you too. They don't care." Malik didn't argue. He couldn't argue with that fear. But he wasn't going to give up that easily. The doorbell rang, and Malik's heart stopped. He stepped cautiously toward the door, trying to see through the peephole. A man in a suit stood there, his face cold and hard. "I'm here for the boy," the man said, his voice flat. Malik's eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" The man's eyes flicked toward the window, toward Zayn. "I said, I'm here for the boy. Now open the door." Malik's grip on the gun tightened. He wasn't going to let anyone take Zayn, not without a fight. But just as he raised his hand to move, he felt a strange shiver down his spine. Something didn't feel right. Suddenly, there was a knock on the back door. The man in the suit smiled coldly. "You can run, but you can't hide." The tension in the room was suffocating. Malik wasn't sure who these people were, but one thing was certain. They were after Zayn, and the boy's story was beginning to sound too real. He couldn't just hand him over. Zayn slowly stood up. "They're coming for me, to finish what they started." Malik looked at him with understanding. "I'm not letting them have you." Just then, the room grew deathly quiet. The front door shook with a loud bang. The back door burst open. A tall man in a military uniform stepped in. Zayn gasped. It was him. Ghost. Malik felt his heart stop. This was no myth. The man standing before him was the real deal, Delta Force. A ghost from the past. But the boy wasn't afraid. He stepped forward, his voice shaking but clear. "You came for me," Zayn said. "I won't go back." The man in uniform, Colonel Zoraib, took a step forward, his eyes cold but not angry. They were tired, worn. "You don't have a choice," he said quietly. Malik couldn't believe it. A legend alive. Zoraib's eyes moved from Zayn to Malik. "You have no idea what's really happening here." The room was suffocating with tension. Zoraib, the man from Zayn's past, stood still, silent, like a shadow in the corner of the room. His eyes never left the boy. Zayn stood frozen, as if staring at a ghost. But this wasn't some soldier from the past. This was Colonel Zoraib, once a leader in a top-secret military unit, the one who trained Zayn to be something else, something dangerous. Malik's grip tightened around his gun, his knuckles white. He had no idea what was happening, but he could feel it. This man was not someone you crossed. I'm not going back with you, Zayan said, his voice full of defiance, though it shook. Zoraid's eyes softened. Just for a moment, he stepped forward slowly. You don't have a choice, Zayan, he said, his voice quiet but firm. You're in this now. There's no way out. Zayan took a step back, his face pale. I didn't want any of this. You don't get to decide my life. Zoraid's expression hardened. I didn't choose this either, kid, but it's not about what you want anymore. It's about survival. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from outside the police station. The windows rattled as if the ground itself was shaking. Malik moved instinctively, his training kicking in. He rushed to the window, peering out through the blinds. A black SUV had just parked outside, and there was no sign of the people who'd been watching earlier. Then, he heard the sound of heavy boots marching down the street, the unmistakable rhythm of soldiers, professionals. Malik turned to Zoraib. We don't have much time. Zoraib nodded slowly. They found you. They always do. Malik's mind raced. These weren't just random attackers. The people coming for Zayan were part of something much bigger, something dangerous. But who were they working for? Zoraib moved towards the door, his eyes scanning the room, his hand resting on the grip of his weapon. Get ready, he said quietly. They're coming, and they'll do anything to get to him. Malik's heart pounded in his chest. He had thought he was just protecting a runaway kid, but this was bigger than anything he had ever imagined. Zoraib's words haunted him. If they want him back, it's because they know what he's capable of. Another bang came from the front door. It shook the entire station. The lock cracked under the pressure, and the door flew open. The men in black entered, their faces hidden behind masks, moving fast and deadly. The air in the room grew thick with fear. Zoraib didn't flinch. He moved like lightning, pulling out a tactical knife from his belt and slashing the air with it. His eyes locked on the men. I don't want to fight you, Zoraib said coldly. But if you want him, you'll have to get through me. One of the masked men stepped forward. Step aside, Colonel. You know the rules. We'll take the boy, and you can go back into hiding where you belong. Zoraib's face tightened. I'm not hiding anymore. Malik stood by, his mind spinning. These men weren't just mercenaries. They were part of something much deeper. They were after Zayan, and they weren't leaving without him. The room fell into a tense silence. Zoraib stood facing the men, unflinching. Zayan stood behind him, his eyes filled with uncertainty and fear. But there was something else, something burning inside him, a strength he hadn't known he had. Without warning, Zoraib moved. In one fluid motion, he grabbed one of the men by the throat, lifting him off the ground. The man struggled, but Zoraib's grip was unyielding. With a twist, he slammed the man into the wall, knocking him out cold. The other men hesitated, stunned by the speed and power of the attack. Zoraib turned to Malik. Get the kid out of here. Now. Malik nodded quickly, grabbing Zayan by the arm. But Zayan pulled back. No, I'm not leaving. His voice was firm now, like he had made a choice. You don't have a choice, Zayan. Malik shouted, urgency in his voice. These men aren't here to play games. They'll kill us if we don't move. Zoraib's voice broke through the tension. He's right. I'll hold them off. You have to go. Now. Before Malik could protest, the door behind them flew open with a loud crash. More men flooded in, guns raised. Malik pushed Zayan toward the back exit. Go now, he shouted. Zoraib turned to face the intruders. I'll stop them. But you have to survive this, Zayan. Remember who you are. Zayan hesitated for a moment. Then, with one last look at the man who had once trained him, he ran. As Zayan and Malik dashed through the back alley, the sound of gunfire echoed behind them. They had no plan, no backup, and no way of knowing who was watching them. But Zayan felt something inside him, something stronger than fear. The training, the lessons he had learned, the things he had been taught to survive. It was his turn to be the one who ran the show. The alley was dark, damp, and silent, except for the rapid sound of footsteps as Malik and Zayan raced through the night. The air felt thick, like something was watching them from the shadows. waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Malik pulled Zayan around a corner, his breath coming in quick, sharp gasps. "Keep moving. Don't stop," he hissed. Zayan stumbled behind him, still shaken, his mind racing. Who were those men? What did they want with him? And why had Zoraib come back? The man he once saw as a hero was now a ghost, haunted by the past, desperate to protect him. But Zoraib couldn't fight everyone. He couldn't hold them off forever. Malik glanced back over his shoulder. No one followed. For now, they were safe. But the silence around them felt too still, like the calm before a storm. They reached an old storage warehouse on the outskirts of town, its broken windows glowing faintly in the moonlight. Malik pushed open the door, and they slipped inside. The interior was dark, filled with old crates and dust-covered equipment. The smell of rust and mildew filled the air. It was the perfect place to hide, for now. Malik crouched down, checking the room. "We'll stay here for a while, at least until things cool down." Zayan leaned against the wall, his chest rising and falling as he caught his breath. He was trying to stay calm, but the images from the past few hours were flashing in his mind. The men in black, the guns, the fight, and Zoraib's cold, unfeeling eyes. The memories, they were haunting him. "Zayan!" Malik's voice broke through his thoughts. He looked up to find the older man watching him closely, concern written across his face. "What is it?" Zayan asked quietly. "I know this is hard, but we need to talk," Malik said. He walked over, sitting across from Zayan, his voice softening. "What exactly happened at that camp? Why did they want you back?" Zayan swallowed hard. His throat felt dry. "It's not just about me," he said quietly. "It's about what I became." Malik frowned. "What do you mean?" Zayan took a deep breath, his eyes haunted by the memories. "They wanted us to become soldiers. Not just anyone. They called it Project Ghost. We were meant to be perfect. Deadly, silent, trained in every weapon, every strategy, every mission. We were raised for one thing, war." Malik's face grew serious, his mind racing. "That's why Zoraib is back. He was part of that project. He knows what you're capable of." Zayan nodded slowly. "I didn't want to be like them, but they made me believe I was. They trained me to be just like them." He looked away, his voice growing smaller. "I was just a kid. I didn't know who I was anymore. I was a weapon." Malik watched him for a long moment, the weight of Zayan's words settling in. He had no idea the boy had gone through something like that. He had no idea what it took to escape it. "I didn't want to be a killer," Zayan continued, his voice breaking. "I wanted to be a normal person. But they kept pushing. Kept telling us we were chosen. And when I ran, I thought I was free. But now, they're coming for me." Suddenly, a faint noise echoed from outside the warehouse. A car door slammed. The footsteps, slow, deliberate. The hairs on the back of Malik's neck stood up. "They're here," Malik whispered, his eyes narrowing. He quickly moved to the broken window, peering outside. 2 black SUVs were parked at the entrance, just like before. "Stay low. Don't make a sound," he said, his voice sharp. Zayan's heart pounded in his chest. He had barely escaped the first time. Could he really do it again? "Do you know who's coming for us?" Zayan asked, his voice trembling. Malik looked at him, his face grim. "They're not just mercenaries. They're Delta Force. The same group Zoraib was part of. These people don't stop until they get what they want." There was a sudden crash, a door splintering under the force of a kick, the sound of boots moving swiftly toward them. "We don't have much time," Malik said, his eyes frantic. "We need to move now." Zayan nodded quickly. He was ready to face whatever came next. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about fighting back. They ran deeper into the warehouse, ducking behind crates and old machinery. The sound of boots grew louder, closer. Zayan could hear their breathing now, soft and steady, like predators closing in on their prey. He turned to Malik, his eyes filled with determination. "I won't run anymore." Malik looked at him, surprised by the strength in the boy's voice. "You'll have to," Malik said, his voice firm. "You're not ready for this. But Zayn shook his head, his gaze unwavering. I've been ready. I was trained for this. I can't run anymore. I won't be their weapon. A shadow moved across the room. The sound of heavy breathing echoed as one of the men in black stepped forward, a gun raised. Zayn's heart raced. He stepped forward, his body instinctively moving into a fighting stance. He wasn't a kid anymore. The warehouse was alive with the sounds of pursuit. Footsteps echoed louder, growing closer. Malik pulled Zayn behind a stack of old crates, urging him to stay low and silent. Zayn's heart was pounding in his chest. He could hear the heavy breaths of the men searching the place, moving like ghosts, their steps synchronized. These weren't just trained soldiers. They were hunters, moving through the dark like shadows. The air felt thick with the smell of dust and rust, and Zayn could barely hear his own breath over the sound of his heartbeat. Stay down, Malik whispered urgently, pressing his back against the crates. His hand tightened around his weapon. We can't let them find us. Zayn nodded, trying to control his breathing, but his mind raced. Who were they really? What did they want from him? In the darkness, his past rushed back in waves, memories flooding his mind, the Project Ghost training, the cold, relentless drills, the empty faces of his fellow soldiers. They had been turned into weapons, and Zoraid's words rang in his ears. They'll never let you go. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by a loud crash. One of the men had found something. The footsteps quickened. We're running out of time, Malik muttered under his breath, scanning the shadows for any sign of escape. We have to move now. Before Zayn could respond, he saw a flash of movement from the corner of his eye. A figure stepped into the room, tall and imposing, the shadows around him deepening as if he were part of them. Zayn froze. It was him, the one who had haunted his nightmares for years. Ghost. Zoraid had said that name in the past, but Zayn had never understood the true terror it carried. Now, standing in front of him, the man looked like the embodiment of death itself. The figure stood still, his dark eyes scanning the room, his military uniform pristine, his weapon holstered but ready. Colonel Zoraid, the man who had once trained him, molded him into something he didn't want to be, was now a ghost from Zayn's past. Zoraid's voice cut through the tension like a knife. You don't have to fight, Zayn, he said, his tone calm, almost sad. I didn't want this for you, but you're part of this now. You always were. Zayn's breath caught in his throat. The fear that had built up inside him now felt like a storm, crashing through his chest. No, he whispered. I'm not part of this anymore. I'm not your weapon. Zoraid stepped forward slowly, his eyes locked onto Zayn's. You never stopped being my weapon. They don't let you leave. They own you. The men in black moved in, surrounding the two of them. The darkness seemed to swallow them whole, their faces hidden, their weapons aimed with deadly precision. Malik stood up, his eyes sharp, his body tense. He reached for his gun, but Zayn stopped him with a quiet shake of his head. This wasn't their fight, not yet. We don't have time for this, Zoraid said, his voice cold and final. You can run, but they'll always find you. You can fight, but you'll never win. This is your fate. Zayn clenched his fists, the memory of his training rushing back. He wasn't the scared boy he used to be. He had learned to fight. He had learned to survive. No, Zayn said, his voice strong. You don't control me anymore. I'm not going back. With a swift motion, Zayn lunged forward, his body moving on instinct. The years of training kicked in. The fight began. Zoraid reacted instantly, his military training overwhelming Zayn's raw emotion. But Zayn wasn't afraid. Every strike, every move, felt like a part of him fighting back against his past. He wasn't running anymore. He wasn't the weapon they had made him. He was Zayn, the boy who would no longer let them control his future. Malik moved quickly, taking advantage of the distraction. He aimed at one of the men in black, his shot ringing out, but there were too many of them. The room was closing in. Zoraid, despite his years of experience, found himself struggling to keep up with Zayn. The boy was fast, unpredictable. Zoraid saw the anger in his eyes, anger at being used, at being controlled. Zoraib hadn't seen that before, not in the kids he trained. This was different. For a split second, their eyes met, Zoraib's face unreadable, Zayan's filled with determination. Zoraib paused, just long enough for Zayan to land a blow that sent him stumbling back. "Stop!" Zoraib's voice cut through the chaos. For a moment, everything stopped. Zoraib stood tall, his hands raised in a sign of surrender. He was tired, the years of training and violence catching up with him. His voice softened, but there was still an edge to it. "You don't know what you're up against, Zayan. This isn't just about us anymore. There's more at play here than you realize." Zayan took a step back, his chest heaving. "Then tell me," he demanded. "Tell me what's really happening. Why are they after me? What do they want?" Zoraib's eyes flickered, a brief shadow of hesitation crossing his face. "It's not just you they want. It's what you are, what you were trained to be. You're the key to something bigger." Before Zoraib could say more, a loud crash echoed from the entrance. More men poured into the warehouse, weapons drawn. Zoraib's face grew hard again. "We don't have time for this. Run, Zayan, now." Zayan's heart was still pounding. He didn't know who to trust anymore. But one thing was clear, he couldn't go back. He couldn't be part of their game anymore. He turned to Malik. "We need to get out of here, now." As they ran toward the exit, the sound of gunfire echoed behind them. But this time, Zayan didn't feel the fear he had felt before. This was his fight now. This was his choice. Zayan's feet hit the cold concrete floor as he and Malik sprinted through the warehouse, their footsteps pounding in unison. The air felt heavy, thick with the tension of the chase. They were running, but for how long? Behind them, the sound of footsteps was growing louder, closer. The men in black were relentless, but Zayan's mind was sharper now, the training coursing through him, guiding his every movement. He had no time for fear. Malik led the way toward the back exit, a rusted door that creaked as they pushed it open. They stepped into the alley, the night air biting at their skin. But before they could get far, they were stopped. A black SUV was parked at the end of the alley, blocking their path. The headlights blinked on, casting an eerie glow across the scene. "They're waiting for us," Malik muttered, his eyes narrowing. Zayan felt a surge of frustration. How could they keep finding them? How many more men were there? But this wasn't the time to think about that. He had to focus on getting out alive. "We're not running anymore," Zayan said, his voice steady. Malik looked at him, eyes filled with concern. "What are you talking about? We need to go now." But Zayan stood his ground, his chest rising and falling with the weight of the moment. He wasn't running anymore. "I've been running my whole life," Zayan said. "It's time to face this." From behind them, a voice echoed in the alley. Zoraib's deep, commanding tone rang out, cutting through the night. "Zayan, you don't have to do this." Zayan turned to face the voice, his hands balled into fists. "You don't get to tell me what I have to do anymore, Zoraib," he shouted. "I'm done with being your weapon." Zoraib stepped into the light, his expression hard, unreadable. "You never were just a weapon, Zayan." His voice softened for a moment, a hint of something resembling regret in his eyes. "I tried to protect you, tried to make you see. But this is bigger than both of us." Zayan took a step forward, his eyes blazing with determination. "I don't care about any of that anymore. All I care about is getting out. You're not going to stop me." Zoraib's face tightened, but before he could say another word, a loud gunshot rang out from behind him. A man in black stood in the distance, his weapon aimed straight at Zayan. The shot had missed, just barely, but it was a warning. The hunters were closing in. Zoraib didn't flinch, but the look in his eyes darkened. "Move now, Zayan," Zoraib ordered. "There's no time." Zayan's heart pounded in his chest. He had a choice to make. He could run, keep running, stay hidden, wait for things to settle, or he could fight back, make his stand right here. He knew what he had to do. The next moments unfolded like a blur. Zayan's instincts kicked in as he spun toward the man who had fired the shot, his body moving in a fluid, precise motion. With one swift movement, Zayan knocked the gun out of the man's hands, sending him crashing to the ground. Zoraib and Malik both moved quickly, engaging with the other men in black who had surrounded them. But Zayn's mind was focused on one thing only: survival. He grabbed the fallen man's gun and pointed it at another assailant who was charging toward them. The man froze, eyes wide with surprise. "Stay back, or I'll shoot," Zayn shouted, his voice calm but filled with authority. The moment felt like an eternity, the silence hanging thick in the air. The remaining men hesitated, their weapons still raised, but they couldn't ignore the fire in Zayn's eyes. He wasn't the scared kid anymore. He wasn't the soldier they had trained. He was someone else now. "Drop your weapons," Malik's voice boomed, and for the first time in this fight, the remaining attackers hesitated. Zoraib stepped forward, his voice a low growl. "Don't test him." Zayn's pulse was racing, his grip on the gun steady. This was it. Everything that had led up to this moment, his training, his fears, the fight with his past, was now on the line. Zoraib watched him, a hint of pride flickering behind his eyes. "You've come a long way, Zayn." Zayn didn't respond. He didn't need to. He wasn't fighting for Zoraib or for anyone else. He was fighting for himself. Suddenly, the sound of sirens pierced the air, loud, approaching fast. Malik's eyes widened. "We've got to go." Zayn didn't wait. Without hesitation, he grabbed Malik's arm and pulled him toward the alley's exit. Zoraib gave a brief, silent nod before disappearing into the shadows, knowing his time was up. But the battle wasn't over, not by a long shot. They ran down the alley, weaving through the streets, adrenaline coursing through their veins. The sirens were getting closer, but Zayn wasn't thinking about them anymore. He was thinking about the future, the choices he had made, and how he had taken control of his own destiny. As they turned the corner, Zayn looked back for a moment. For the first time, he felt free, no longer a weapon, no longer a pawn in someone else's game. The world outside the warehouse was a blur, the flashing lights, the echo of distant sirens, and the steady rush of air as Zayn and Malik sprinted through the city streets. Every corner turned, every step taken felt like it could be their last. But Zayn didn't feel fear anymore. He felt something different, the weight of his decisions. The anger that had driven him, the past that had shaped him, were all coming to a head. They reached an old, abandoned building on the outskirts of the city, a place they had planned to hide for the time being. The large metal door creaked as Malik pushed it open, revealing a dimly lit room. Zayn's chest still heaved with the adrenaline of the chase, but his mind was racing with thoughts of what came next. What would happen after all of this? Could he ever truly escape his past? "We're safe here for now," Malik said, locking the door behind them. But his tone was tense. "It's only a matter of time before they find us." Zayn nodded, his eyes distant. He wasn't worried about being found. He had faced them all. He had been trained to fight, to survive. But the bigger question remained. What was he really fighting for? He moved toward the window, peering out at the streets below. His thoughts were heavy. His entire life had been spent running, surviving, trying to escape the ghosts of his past. But there was no more running. A sudden knock at the door jolted Zayn out of his thoughts. He turned toward it, his body tense. "Who is it?" Malik whispered, moving toward the door cautiously. Zayn felt a chill run down his spine. He didn't know what was waiting on the other side, but he wasn't about to let fear control him anymore. He was in control now. "Zayn, open up," came a voice from the other side. "Zoraib?" Zayn didn't hesitate. He walked over to the door, his hands steady, and opened it to face the man who had once been his mentor, the man who had made him what he was. Zoraib stood there, his expression unreadable, his posture stiff. His eyes were hard, but there was something else, something that Zayn couldn't quite place. "I told you before," Zoraib said, his voice low. "You're not free. You think you've escaped, but it's never that simple." Zayn stood his ground, his eyes never leaving Zoraib's. "Then I'll make it simple." His voice was steady. "I'm done being part of your war." Zoraib took a step closer, his gaze flickering with something, regret, maybe? Or was it just the weariness of a man who had seen too much? "You don't understand." Zoraib's voice dropped to a whisper, They'll never leave you alone. They know what you are. They'll always come for you. Zayn's heart was still, his mind clearer than ever before. He wasn't afraid of them anymore. They could come after him. They could keep hunting him. But he wasn't going to be their tool anymore. I don't care. Zayn's words were final, decisive. I'm not going back. Not to them. Not to you. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of Zoraid's past and Zayn's future hung between them like a tangible thing. Zoraid's eyes softened for the briefest second. Then his face hardened again. He stepped back slowly, as if weighing his next words carefully. You're making a mistake. Zoraid's voice cracked with something Zayn couldn't understand. This isn't over. Without another word, Zoraid turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness of the city. Zayn stood there, his heart pounding in his chest, but a sense of clarity washed over him. He had made his choice. Malik stepped forward, his eyes scanning the room, his posture tense. What now? Zayn didn't look at him right away. His thoughts were still with Zoraid, still weighing the gravity of what had just happened. But he knew. He knew what came next. We fight. Zayn's voice was low, but filled with conviction. Malik raised an eyebrow. Fight? We've been fighting for days, Zayn. It's not going to be that simple. Zayn turned to him, his eyes cold but resolute. I'm not running anymore. I'm done hiding from them. If they want to come for me, they can. But they're going to have to face me first.